Resident Evil 1 is probably one of the best horror games I've ever played. And now, of course, in my time playing Resident Evil 1, there's been quite a few moments that I feel are the scariest in the game. So, I compiled a bit of a list of the creepiest and scariest moments in Resident Evil 1 in its remake. Obviously, none of this is in any particular order, so let's just simply get into the video. Because at number 1, we of course have the spider in the hallway in Resident Evil 1. I think this is probably one of the more creepy moments because, the spiders don't really seem to have left the underground section of the game or the guest house. So finding a spider in a mansion was actually generally horrifying uh, to encounter at first. Eventually, you kind of just get used to them, but for the first time, it provided such a shock. Next up, you of course have Neptune. I don't like sharks. Neptune makes it on the list because of that, but it's also a really good moment in the game because up until then, you haven't really faced anything too extreme. Most of the enemies could just simply be dealt with just a few bullets, but then you get this shark, which you have to do a few special things just to get Neptune, out of the way. Not to mention, Neptune also provides a substantial threat to the player because, it can attack you when you're in its lair. Same with the other sharks. And the puzzle to take it out is also quite confusing, which adds a bit more of a stress factor to it. Of course, next up, we of course have the first Chimera. These guys are absolutely freaky. They're bug-like monsters that came from people. Yeah, Umbrella does some really twisted experiments. Now, when I first played the Resident Evil 1 remake, I did not know that these things existed. I thought I knew everything about Resident Evil 1, but I was completely shocked when I ran into one of these. Because it was when I was down in the lab and trying to get, I think, to one of the MO discs. One of these things just came out of nowhere, and it took me by surprise. They are by far probably one of the creepiest enemies in the series, and they also get to be a bit of a handful when you're in the remake, when you're transporting a item to fix the elevator, as if they hit you, you have a chance of dying. So that's a bit of a difficulty curve when you get to the lab, especially if you're not trying to save or you're speedrunning the game. Next up, we of course have the first Crimson Head and after them. The first Crimson Head is generally really horrifying. The fact that zombies can come back is a scary thing. And it gets worse because Resident Evil 1 doesn't really give you enough ammo to deal with some of the enemies on higher difficulties, encouraging you to simply run past. And it's not just one Crimson Head. Zombies that you don't completely destroy have a chance to come back, which adds more difficulty to this game compared to the first one. And it makes playing this game, it makes playing it more fun, but it also kind of makes it more challenging too. After that, we of course have the Tyrant. The Tyrant is, Tyrant's creepy. It serves as the final boss of the game, and, it's not the most interesting boss in terms of combat. It is one of the more creepy enemies because this is the first one that you've seen, and it kind of outclasses everything else in the mansion. And of course, at number 2, we of course have the dog that jumps through the window. Yeah, these guys are definitely not fun. The game does kind of give you a bit of a warning when you're first playing, as a window slightly cracks, but when you return, well, you get to deal with some dogs that just jump through a window. And especially on higher difficulties, it can be a bit tough. Or if you were low on ammo, like what this game wants you to be, it can be real tough. Of course, I do have some honorable mentions, and of course, that is the crows, and of course, the hunters, and of course, the OST. The crows, yeah, they're creepy, because you can get attacked by them, but they're not that threatening. The hunters, they're really scary because you encounter them by surprise when you return from the god house, and then you have to deal with them in the mansion and in the underground. Then, of course, we have the OST. The OST generally adds a lot to this game. It adds a lot to the atmosphere of this game and kind of makes it a little tense to play through at times. And of course, one last one I'll mention, and that is Jan. Jan is creepy. A giant snake roaming through the mansion. It's not a fun thing to deal with. And, well, it does eventually die. Well, it's still a giant snake. And of course, Richard became its dinner. Then, of course, number 1 is, of course, Lisa Trevor. Now, I'm just gonna put the entire encounter for her, because you do encounter her quite a few times in this game, and, well, she's kind of creepy. You first encounter her after you leave the mansion, when you're trying to get a key item, I think. She knocks out the player, and the player is forced to flee. Then she returns in the underground section, and then right before you enter the lab. And what sucks is, apparently in the canon, she doesn't die until Wesker finds her in the Umbrella Chronicles. So for all this stuff, Lisa still does not die. And I personally think she's one of the creepier moments in the game. Not because she's tough, but because of her backstory too. This was someone that was a human. And it's horrifying that through Umbrella's experiments that she became a monster. And of course, this wouldn't be the first time Umbrella has done a lot of shady stuff. But I felt that I should have talked about these. So of course, these were my favorite scary moments in Resident Evil 1. Now, obviously, I plan to talk about the other games as time goes on. So stay tuned for those videos. Thank you all for watching, and I will of course be back next time with a brand new video. Peace out.